Don't get me started. This is like, it's mind-boggling because not only just because it's my cousin, naturally, and I know the history. I didn't know that part of the history, though. If anybody says there is no God, they're crazy. I'm going to tell you what. God loves us so much. He'll let you go to hell to get you out. Just to prove to you that he's faithful. And the crazy thing is God, when he marks a family, I'm not talking about an individual family, but yes, in an individual family. But if we start looking at ourselves as a family, God marks a family, and he'll go through anything. And he'll let you go through anything to get out of you what he wants. I don't know how I want to start because I don't know if I want to start in Exodus or if I want to start in Acts. Because it goes together. And this whole thing is like, it's just mind-boggling how it is. But I'll tell you what, my computer opened up and it opened up to Exodus. So let's just turn to the book of Exodus, verse 3. Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father, in the law. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me start all over again. Let me slow it down a little bit. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. You know what Midian stands for? One thing I didn't realize, Midian is the son of Abraham. But if you look at, let me go back. It's Mid-Yah, Y-A-W-N with a slash. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but that's okay. And this is what the Strong says. The same as H4079, Midian, a son of Abraham. All right, but if you go to 4079, it's a variation of 4066. It's brawling and contention. So this is what's really kind of funny about this whole thing. If you know the history of Moses, Moses was 40 years, right? He was 40 years down in Egypt after he was miraculously saved. God had a mark on his life before he even came to earth. God already had it planned out how it's going to take place. God already knew that Pharaoh and all those bad, wicked people were going to try killing, doing all the things that they did to the children of Israel. He knew all that stuff, and he heard the voice of his son crying for a deliverer. And God said, I have the right man. And it starts out as a little baby boy. Already started out in problems right off the bat. And he didn't do anything. He was just born. He just showed up. And we know the whole story, the whole miraculous story of there. But after 40 years, he grown up, right? He grew up in the house of the Egyptians. He was trained in all their ways. He was tutored. He was right at the top. He was right underneath his grandpa. He was right there. He knew it all. But something deep inside of him, this is what, it's amazing. Something after 40 years deep inside of him, all of a sudden he starts to wonder about his true identity. And he said, I want to see my family. My paraphrase, the Israelites. Did his mother and his sister had something involved in it? I would say yes. I would say that they dealt with him all the way through his life. Can I prove it? No, I don't have to prove it. But if I know a mother will go through great everything for their children. So he gets over there at 40 years old, and guess what happens? He sees an Israelite getting what? Beat up by an Egyptian, and he takes the matter in his own hands. He turned into Danny. He became the bouncer, and he took care of the person. See, the bouncers back then are a whole lot meaner than the bouncers nowadays. They just took you out. So then he turns around and he what? He gets thrown. Now he's 40 years old. He sees his brothers fighting in the church. And he goes to them and they say what we all know the story. Do we all know the story? Does everybody know the story of Moses? Do me a favor. Be like one of those little dogs, the bobblehead dogs. Do something. You don't know the story of Moses? Does anybody? Oh. Which part? Dude, everything. His life. If you can't put your life inside of his life, listen. God heard a cry in the midst of the earth. And he says, I need a deliverer. We think it's Jesus. Well, guess what? Are you the voice of Jesus? If he dwells inside of you, he lives inside of you. I've said this once before. If I heard an audible voice out here, I wouldn't have to worry about the thing what he went through. It would be cleaned out. Come on. So he turns around and he gets scared or what happens, and he takes off. He runs. He's on the run. How many in here all of a sudden get scared of something and you decide you want to run? That's exactly what he does. You want to know something? He could have been running before he ever left the building. Pastor always used to say this, right? You could backslide and never leave the pew. Because you got to remember, in the New Testament, it's not so much what you do, it's what you... He put the screws a little tighter. All right? So he goes out there, and all of a sudden, see, this is all in God's plan. He gets him out there running around, and he's trying to get Moses out of Moses. But in the midst of getting Moses out of Moses, he decided, well, Moses has got to have a family because that's what they do. And all of a sudden, he just brings him across this plan, this plot of land or whatever. And all of a sudden, there's a bunch of women taking care of sheep. You couldn't do that nowadays, could you? And it was crazy because they used to have to wait for everybody else to take care of their sheep, and they got whatever was left over, right? So long story short, he intercedes because he's the bouncer. He gets rid of all the other people. He waters their flock. He does everything he's supposed to do, and they go home, and the very first thing his father says how come you're back so soon? And they said, well, this man, this Egyptian, now he looked like an Egyptian. Oh my gosh. He looked like the world, but his heart wasn't like that. And their father said, well, how come you didn't bring him home? Now, I question if my daughters brought boys home. It'd be nice. Never mind, I'll leave that alone. Same with my son-in-laws and my daughters-in-laws. I'm glad when they come to the house. All right? Because that's how you get, didn't we talk about this in Sunday school? Relationships, right? Love. How are you going to know somebody? Is by having a relationship. Megan, am I as mean as I appear to be? No. She thought I was a mean old grumpy man. It's the truth, ask her. But when she really got to know me, I'm not like that. So long story short, so now Jethro decides, hey, this is a good boy. This is a good boy. 40 years old, he's a good boy, right? He could have been older than that. I don't know. Let's not speculate for time's sake because you guys want to go home. But listen, this is what happens. He turns around and gives his daughter to him. So he married into strife and brawling and contention. He married into that. It's just called the part of life. So he was never satisfied with that. But you know what? Being in that, and Dad had a business. He had a business taking care of sheep, right? He had a sheep. So he became the lead herdsman. So now, see, he went from the chief. I think I read one place when he was in Egypt, he was the chief officer of the military. He went from the chief officer of the military to the chief officer of the flock. What a promotion. And so now he's over here and he's looking for somewheres to water and feed his flock. So now we get over here to chapter 3 and verse 1. I said all that to get to where I'm going. God, keep helping me. So we got all the way down to that was verse 1. It's got an A and a B part. That was just part A. Here's B. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert. And came to the mountain of God, even to Hebron. Think about it. Everybody wants to go to the mountain of the Lord? Anybody in here want to go to the mountain of the Lord? The mountain of God. You're going to the backside of the desert. We don't like that nowadays. But there's a purpose why you have to go to the backside of the desert. There's certain things that we have to go through our life, right, Danny? So God can get to what He wants to do in your life. Paul said it this way: the things that I want to do, I don't do. And the things I don't want to do, I end up doing. He's wrestling back and forth, right? Jacob wrestled with God. All these people are wrestling. Where are you going to be wrestling with them? On the backside of the desert. In the wilderness. It's called the process. God is not doing anything in secret. He's written it all down. This is the process of God. He's taking us into Himself, which is ultimate, right? Isn't that the ultimate? The mountain of the Lord, Him. Right? Is this good? Is this all right? Am I good so far? Am I good? Does everybody understand? Verse 2. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of a bush. This word bush, and we're not talking George and all the other family there, but it's from an unused root meaning to prick. A bramble, right? B-R-A-M-B-L-E, bramble, bush. You know what? This is really amazing. Guess how many times that word bush occurs in the Old Testament? Think of what it is. It pricks, and it's a bramble bush. Prickly, right? They made a crown of thorns and stuck it around his head, right? They pounded it in his head. For what purpose? Because it was the thorns. It keeps him girded up. I can still picture Dad with the stupid girdle. Gird up your loins. It occurs 6 times. He's on the backside of the desert. I don't know if he knew that this was God's mountain or it wasn't God's mountain, but all of a sudden, this angel, see, we love angels. They're the wingy people. But really, listen to this, the word angel. From an unused root meaning to dispatch as a deputy. Oh, I just want to say something. I just want to say something. I got to say something to him. You got to wait till you've been dispatched. You want to be an angel to somebody? You want to be an angel? An angel of light? You got to remember, there is a false angel of light. But we want to be the true angel of light. A dispatch as a deputy, a messenger, specifically of God, one who's been sent by God Almighty. Isn't that what you were talking about him today, right, Sister Linda? You know, don't talk about the creation. Don't fall in love with the creation. Fall in love with the Creator. Well, how can you fall in love with something that you cannot see? And then I got a little inkling of it. It's not so much of what's out there. It's what's the greatest thing that he created. What the greatest thing he created was mankind. So why is that? So he could live in the midst of mankind. So you could do one thing. The love that he put inside of each and every one of us, we can share it with each other. But let's not be selfish. That is an angel, in parentheses, also a prophet, a priest, or a teacher, an ambassador, an angel. Listen to this, a king. He's called us to be what? Kings and priests. I had this conversation with Brother Bud, and we start talking about the Leviticus priesthood, right? The priesthood, right? You know what they got for an inheritance? This is one thing we don't like about the Old Testament. We like this is what I said to Brother Bud, we like all the other 11 tribes. We don't like that one tribe because that one tribe got like nothing on earth. But they got all of him. But they also got, see, I probably knew it, but I probably forgot about it. Brother Bud said this. But what they got, Aaron got the burden of the house, but not only him, but the whole tribe ended up with that burden. Are you ready? Did everybody hear what he said? Jesus bore our iniquity. All right? So let's go on. And he looked, you got to do this. You got to do this. He looked, and behold, the bush burneth with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Think about it. He come and light our fire. He come and lit us. And we've heard over and over the years that he's come to burn up the wood, hay, and the stubble and all that. Let him burn it up. But I'm telling you what, this wood right here, it didn't burn. It didn't burn up. So that tells me something about this flesh, this thing, this bodily thing that we have. He don't want to burn this thing up. He don't want to impart man. He wants a complete man. Because I'm going to tell you what, my spirit is saved. I'm getting my soul saved. But once those two get totally saved, my body is going to come completely saved. Yeah, all my bumps and aches and pains and all the other pressure I put on me or whatever, once that all gets taken care of in the fire, he's come for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to purify us. Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burning. My gosh, Danny, I'm telling you, this is what happened. Whatever took place in your life before, something caused you to look at this flame, and it caught you on fire, and it didn't matter what you went through, you have to keep going back to see why it's not burnt up yet. And there's a reason. This is the reason why, folks. And when the Lord, nobody else, think about this. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses, Samuel, Samuel, Ronnie, Ronnie, Jennifer, Jennifer. Do I have to keep going? I'm going to tell you what caused you? What caused you to turn to look? This might have been in the Old Testament, and yes, it's a picture, and it's a shadow of everything of the new, but I'm telling you what, that same spirit which raised Christ from the dead, it dwelt inside of Moses at that same time, and it was there from the beginning. And God placed it inside of there, inside of him, and all he had to do is have a function or something to take place for get him to turn. How many times have you been walking down the road? I got numerous of times in my life where I was doing something in my own strength, just minding my own business, just tootling along, and all of a sudden I stopped. And when I turned around, And the greatest thing he said is, here I am. Here I am. Use me. I'm going to tell you, this is the honest truth. I was having a normal phone call, and all of a sudden I heard a voice inside of a voice, and I had to turn from the direction I was going because I heard my name, and I had to say, here I am. That's just me personally. But I'm going to tell you what, each and every one of you has had that same thing happen. Because how do I know? Because you're sitting here hearing my voice. It's crazy. It came out of the midst of them. I said this in Sunday school. We're looking for something way out there. I'm still looking. God, you got to come down, and God, you got to come and help. You got to do something. God, you got to do something. God, you got to do something. And literally, all he's telling me is that little small, still small voice, right? The greatest prophet, one of the greatest prophets in the world, right? He did all those marvelous things. He took care of those 400 prophets, right? He showed a mighty, oh my God, he showed a mighty works, didn't he? And then all of a sudden, somebody said something, and he went running. And in the midst of being running, he went into a cave. Really, he went into the tomb. You run away from God? You could end up finding yourself in a tomb. And he might, well, in his mercy, especially if you haven't fulfilled your call, he will call you. I heard this story this past week. This lady, she was a nurse, and she was in intensive care area, and there was a man, he got in a real bad accident, and the doctor gave him 4 days to live. And then, or they're going to pull the plug, you know. So it's pretty bad, I guess, when you're on a machine and what's keeping you alive, right? They're about ready to pull the plug. And this nurse would go in every day on her shift. She'd go in every day, and she would talk to him like normal. Like he was just normal, right? And every day she kept going in there, she kept talking to him, blah, 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 doing the same thing. She would clean him. She would do all that stuff. Everything that she was doing everything she was supposed to do. But she just kept talking to him, kept talking to him, kept talking to him. And the day that they were going to pull the plug, she sat down on the side of the bed, and she was just talking to him. Was she religious or anything like that? I don't have a clue. She was just talking to him like he was sitting right there. And then all of a sudden, she grabbed his hand, and she said something to him, and he squeezed her hand. And the family was... It was a Jewish family, and the family was in the room. And lo and behold, they said 2 months later he was out of the hospital, and they were ready to pull the plug. I thank God that he didn't pull the plug on any one of us. He could pull the plug anytime he wants. I thank God that he doesn't, because of his mercy, and he's so faithful. He's faithful. He's faithful to complete what he started in our lives. Pastor always said this. He wanted a burning bush experience. And I came to the realization he had the burning bush inside of him. He never burnt up. He never burnt up. It was always there. And I don't want to say it like this, but I'm going to tell you what, even at the end, my God, everybody who we went to the house, he blessed every one of them. He put a blessing on everybody who showed up at that house. Because you know why? That's what a father does. Father always puts a blessing on the children. Now I can go home and I can drive it. You'll get it. Amen? Amen. Shall we stand? Yep.